So I'm going to continue with the morality and ethics. I ran out of time. I'm sorry this is going to go a little bit longer, but there's so much to say in terms of this, and there's so much misunderstanding. So my suggestion is look at the catechism, look it up. I'll give you some information. I'll email it to you guys, but take a moment. I don't want to take up the time to read this, and I have other things to say, but this really does help put into perspective what the church teaches in terms of conscience, and to help you understand the whole idea of forming your conscience. One thing that is really important is sexual ethics, and this comes later on in part 3, and so I just hope you guys continue with part 2, part 3. But it's really important for you as a Catholic educator. It doesn't matter what grade you teach. Our children are becoming sexual a lot earlier than they used to. And even myself 30 years ago, when I started teaching grade 7, my first year, I had to deal with a girl that potentially thought she was pregnant, and that was grade 7. And throughout my career, I've had many situations where I've had to deal with students that were faced in that situation. So we have a responsibility as Catholic educators to educate our students in terms of their moral decision making. Now, this does not have to be based on what you've done in your life. You know, you've made your decisions in terms of your sexuality. That's okay. That's your personal life. But in terms of the church, you really have to align yourself and understand why the church teaches certain issues about morality and ethics in terms of our sexuality. Okay, called the Catholic Birds and the Bees. I did a whole day retreat with my staff on this once because I thought it was really important in a brand new school, young teachers to understand this. And even when I taught at OISE, I realized I had to do this lesson with teachers, because a lot of teachers, young teachers, came into OISE wanting to get a job in a Catholic board, but felt a little apprehensive because of their own decisions they made about their own sexuality, because we tend to associate sin with sexuality, and we don't understand God's gift of our sexuality. We just kind of get rooted in the things we haven't done correctly according to the church, and that involves most of us. Very few of us can uphold 100% the teachings of the church, especially when it comes to sexuality, because our sexuality is so strong, and it does impact us in many different ways, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. It's wrapped up in who we are. We're sexual beings, we're spiritual beings, we're emotional beings, we're physical beings, we're intellectual beings, and it's all woven into who we are. And in every aspect of our lives, we make poor decisions, and so not to just kind of alienate ourselves from outside the church. And the church itself has made it really difficult for us to feel comfortable with our decisions, unfortunately, too. So that's a whole nother issue, a whole nother video, I'm sure, about that as well, And so I always say we really, even if though we don't align ourselves, we have the responsibility. We are taking a paycheck for this, to teach what the church teaches, because those kids are going to have to make up their own decisions as well. They're getting all kinds of messages. Huge. The gospel, according to social media, is the prominent gospel in their lives. But they have to come to our Catholic schools and hear that there's another message. There's another way of being. There's another way of being sexual that's healthier for them. And if I had the time, and if we were in face-to-face, I'd go through this all with you guys. But when I used to teach this, the statistics, the secular world actually supports what some of the church's teachings are, about chastity, about abstinence, about the dignity, when the church teaches about sexuality, it's about the dignity of human life and the consistent ethic of life. Because a lot of people devalue themselves with their misuse of their own sexuality and their confusion for love, and wanting to be accepted. And then, unfortunately, they're making decisions for human life. And I always say, I don't care how old you are, whether you're 13, 23, 33, 43, 53, if you have the capacity to create life, because that's why God created us. God created us with this amazing gift of sexuality. God made us co-creators with God by allowing us to bring human life into this earth. That's an incredible power. That's an incredible gift. it's an enormous responsibility. We cannot take that lightly. And our children who come to our schools deserve to hear what the church teaches in its healthy perspective, you know? So, do you understand that? And if you don't, take the time to understand that. The church is protecting the dignity of human life. So the church put sex into the context of marriage so many years ago when all these, the church doctrine was being developed in church teachings, because that's where the place when it was time for you to take responsibility for human life. You were, committing yourself to another person. You had to be less, selfish. You have to be more giving. Financially, you were taking responsibility. You were changing. You were maturing. Trying to set a home. That was a perfect place to bring a child into the picture, and that's where the church put the whole teaching of, don't have sex before marriage, because sex leads to new life, and new life deserves parents that are ready to receive and to put their energy into raising this life and being responsible and giving them a stable home. And I know that's still not happening even with all our efforts, but the child has a better shot at it, when the parents are at that point in their life. So even if you're a married couple, you have to decide how many children can you bring into this world and support and make decisions based on that. That's where that comes from, so, and we know, we as educators know that children who start being sexually active at an early age, what it can do to them in terms of their own health, it's not healthy. And never mind psychologically and emotionally. I don't have to give you statistics for you to understand that that's huge. Our young people are struggling with so much. And then the pressures of their own sexuality. And then if they ever get pregnant, which I'm sure they do all the time. I've not seen one pregnant child in my school, but they are getting pregnant. I know that. I know there's probably abortions going on in that school. No one's telling me, of course, because I'm the chaplain, and their conscience is killing them. Anyways, I'm on a tangent. We need to understand and be authentic in that respect to our young people, and help them. Sermon of the Mount. I'm switching gears here for a second because that's the scripture passage you guys are going to unpack, and it's interesting. I'm going to do a little bit of an exegesis here. Mark was the first gospel writer. Matthew and Luke took material from Mark, and there was another source called Quell in German, which means source. And there's a lot of theological controversy that this source exists. They're still trying to figure it out. But anyways, I'm not going to get into that. But the Sermon on the Mount is only found in Matthew. You know how I showed you that book Gospel Parallels, that there are certain stories that are found in all three, maybe just two, maybe just in the one. But the Sermon on the Mount is particular to Matthew. There is a similar one called Sermon on the Plain in Luke, but there are differences, and if you look at it, if you do the comparison of the Gospels, for example, Luke comes off the mountain and comes down to the level of the people, the Sermon on the Plain, so that's more, Luke is the Gospel of social justice. But in Matthew, he stays up on the mountain and kind of parallels, the whole Moses experience, because a lot of people look at the Sermon on the Mount as sort of the revised Ten Commandments. The Jesus's law is, we've taken what Moses gave, and now Jesus has kind of upgraded it. Yes and no. The Ten Commandments are still the Ten Commandments, but Jesus came to kind of help people understand God more. He tried to make it more mainstream in the sense of, now how we, what are we doing wrong and how can we make this better? So Jesus was kind of revamping without intentionally wanting to revamp. And that's why we have Christianity. Christianity was a sect of Judaism. So I'm going to actually send you guys this commentary because I'm going to run out of time again in this video. But I'm just going to just read one little part here, which is very interesting. It says, within this Jewish Christian context of Matthew's Gospel, an interesting feature is that between the opening infancy narrative, which I still have to talk to you guys about, a lot of you guys had questions about the infancy narratives, and I'll do that in my scripture feedback, and the closing passion and resurrection narratives, the main body of the Gospel divides significantly into 5 basic sections, each of them climaxing in a major sermon of Jesus. This would suggest to readers familiar with Judaism that the Matthean evangelist was presenting them with a new Christian Pentateuch, literally 5 volumes, superseding the earlier Pentateuch, or the first 5 books of the Old Testament. In other words, Jesus, as a new Moses, was presenting the new Israel with a new Torah, or divine law, from the Mount, and the section containing this particular sermon of Jesus was presented as a symbolic Sinai, in the phrase of the New Jerome Biblical Commentary. So the Jerome Biblical Commentary is the commentary of all commentaries. It's huge. I have one on my bookshelf at home, and it has all the information you need in terms of unpacking scripture. So, some people were asking, what sort of resources should I have as a Catholic educator? Well, along with the 3 C's, the scripture, and then you've got the catechism, a commentary, and a concordance. If you were going to invest in the Jerome Biblical Commentary, have that on your shelf. It will help you unpack everything in scripture. Anyways, so I'm sending this your way, so you can read through this and really understand this particular scripture passage, because it is central in terms of the New Testament, in kind of setting the path for Christianity in terms of, who we are and how do we relate to one another, and faith is all about relationships. How are we relating? How are we loving each other? How are we hurting each other? And that goes part of the, with the morality decision making. I just wanted to look on the website, on the course site here. Sorry, my computer just went down. You guys are also going to be doing social justice, which is huge. I'm just going to go through this all. I'm going to just, what should I direct you to? Social justice is, it started over 100 years ago with Pope Leo and just the whole Industrial Revolution, how workers would be treated in the workplace. And then it's just built since then. We as Catholic Christians really need to be tuned into the issues of justice in our society and our societal structures, and that's why, even voting has a moral obligation for us as Catholic Christians, and to do our research, and are we backing the right politician? And are these politicians going to create a structure in our society that's going to benefit people, especially the poor? There's something called the preferential option of the poor. Do we make our decisions based on the poor? And Jesus was a huge proponent of the poor. I believe the poor are instrumental in terms of our own faith, our relationship with God, and understanding the meaning of life. And there's a poverty within all of us. I'm not just talking about the financial poverty, but that is huge too, in terms of people who are disadvantaged, don't have their basic needs. We have a responsibility in terms of how we live our life too. The decisions we make, how's it impacting someone else, especially now being global communities. So I take kids on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic, so that when they come back here, they understand how we're connected, and the decisions we make can increase someone's poverty or help them in their basic needs. And if, every time we open our wallet and make a decision, just even by what we spend our money, that's a moral decision-making issue. Am I supporting a company that's abusing people, that's abusing the earth, that is in some way harming people? And if I'm spending money and supporting that company, saying, yes, keep going, do what you're doing, I support you, I'm throwing money at you, that is a decision you need to reflect on. So it's huge in terms of our responsibility as Catholic Christians. Christianity is a lifestyle. It's not just a religion. If it's only 1 hour on Sunday, we're in trouble. It's 24/7. From the moment we wake up, press that snooze button, to the moment we close our eyes, we are decision makers. We are in relationship with one another. We are in relationship with God. And the poor, I always leave my students with this question. I'm going to leave it with you. When at the end of the day, that final exam question, when we meet God, God's going to ask us one question. And if we can answer this one question, it's going to say a lot about our lives. How were you in relationship with the poor? Not what did you give the poor? How were you in relationship with the poor? Think about that one. God bless. Have a great day. There's more, but I got to stop right now.